Now, you don't have to be an American to understand the simple truth of this concept upon which the rebirth of Chrysler was built. As a company, we are distinguished by the choices that we ultimately make. We choose to settle for nothing less than our best effort, and it is our pride in doing things well that defines us. It is a simple concept which is far from politics and far from grand ideologies. And like the Fiat revival before it, the Chrysler comeback could have only been achieved with outstanding leadership that had the strength and the courage to challenge destiny and to change it. Our alliance is being led by a group of motivated and tenacious leaders who believe in themselves and in their colleagues. These individuals do not flinch in the face of responsibility, and they have an extraordinary capacity to craft creative collaborations inside their teams. And these leaders are our best hope for the future. They understand competition, they embrace it openly, and know how important it is to continually rethink their approach. Now, one of the biggest tests ahead for our leadership is the cultural integration of Fiat and of Chrysler in a way that builds on our combined capabilities without discarding the strengths that come from our individual histories and our own identities. The partnership will flourish if Fiat and Chrysler people can humbly work alongside each other, listening, sharing experiences, exchanging knowledge and ideas, and expanding their horizons. The extent of our mutual respect will determine our future. The leaders of Fiat and Chrysler share a sense of responsibility that comes with running a global enterprise and awareness that our choices have an impact that goes well beyond the walls of our offices, or the gates of our factory. We share the idea that building a better future, that respecting and contributing to the well-being of society as a whole is not something that can be left to others. It is a commitment that we ourselves must deliver on each and every day, both inside and outside the organization. Now, I'd like to share with you a reflection on the moral responsibility that touches each one of us, and in particular those of you and those of us who aspire to be leaders. Globalization and the advancement of technology increase efficiency and overall wealth, but they also contribute to the social crisis that we're now seeing in many parts of the world, from the Arab uprisings to the protests that have formed spontaneously in many European countries, and to the Occupy Wall Street movement. Now, some commentators have begun referring to our times as the age of outrage. In emerging markets, we see people fighting for their piece of the wealth creation that is associated with globalization. In mature markets, we see people who have been dislocated, who have been robbed of their jobs, security, and dignity by large global forces that they did not create. Time magazine recently declared the protester as its person of the year. In explaining its election, Time wrote that all over the world, protesters of 2011 share a belief that their country's political systems and economies have grown dysfunctional and corrupt. Sham democracies rigged to favor the rich and powerful to prevent significant change. The fact is that even if we look at this trend only through the lens of business, this anger can have a significant impact. Political instability is disruptive to an economy, and ultimately it discourages investment. And taking this to an even higher level, a free society that wants to endure has a vested interest in supporting those that are affected by changes caused by movements in the markets. The future is not just the responsibility of governments, it is an individual and ultimately a collective responsibility. It's a challenge that calls for a concerted shared commitment. Closing our eyes or thinking that finding a solution in someone else's problem makes us part of the problem. I'm raising this issue with you because those responsible for running a global enterprise also have a duty to open their minds and look beyond the walls of their offices. I'm speaking to you about it because your commitment goes beyond the simple professional obligation. And the essence of leadership is this: it's a personal assumption of the moral duty to do something, to take part in the process of building the future. It is acknowledging one's own responsibility to give future generations hope for a better future. This is what ultimately makes leadership a privilege and a noble calling. Now, in preparing for this presentation. I was excited to learn here that the university has a student-initiated revitalization and business club that is focused on developing business-based entrepreneurial development in Detroit. And in support of the effort, the Ross School of Business next week will host the second annual conference focused on Detroit, highlighting the needs and opportunities in the city. I applaud and I support these initiatives. They are tangible recognition that we all have a duty to open our minds and make a commitment to help rebalance the inequities inevitably created by market forces. Detroit is a city that desperately needs educated and energetic young people to transform itself from a suffering urban area into a vibrant center. You are young and you have the future in your hands. My personal view is that the most important motive for work should be pleasure in work, pleasure in its result, and the knowledge the result brings value to the community. Albert Schweitzer, the philosopher and humanitarian, once said that I don't know what your destiny will be, but one thing I know, that the only ones among you who will be really happy are those who have sought and have found a way to serve. When all is said and done, creating a better world is not something that can be delegated to others. This is a duty that we all have. It's a great responsibility and the greatest challenge that we must and will confront. But it's these great challenges that give a deeper significance to who and to what we are. Now, before concluding, I'd like to share with you one last thought that relates directly to the way in which you choose to live your lives. Much of our lives are made up of very clearly defined periods, and education is one of those periods. High school, university, postgraduate studies are all important milestones along that path. And when we pass those milestones, we may feel we're leaving behind a series of rules and rigid patterns, and that we're finally free. Free to choose for ourselves and to begin building what we want. But feeling free and actually being free are two very different things. The freedom I'm talking about is something which is inside you. It is determined by how open-minded you remain, how receptive you are to the different, to the infinite possibilities that present themselves, even if you don't go looking for them or could have never, ever imagined them. Now, one piece of advice that I can give you this evening is to not let the choices you make at a certain moment in your life, choices regarding your studies, the industry that you work in, or the career path you take, shut everything else out. There's so much more on the other side of the door. Being truly free means knowing that you can choose a new direction, a new goal at any time. I started university in Canada and chose to study philosophy simply because at that time in my life it was something that was incredibly important to me. And then I went on to study something else completely different and went to work as an accountant and then as a lawyer. And I changed paths several times, first working in finance, then moving on to packaging, to aluminum, to chemicals, to biotechnology, to services, and now to cars. I can't say if philosophy made me a better lawyer back then or if it makes me a better chief executive today. But it did open my eyes and my mind to other things. And there will be many doors along your path, and behind each one of those doors there will be things that can change you and your lives. But you will recognize them only if you have embraced the philosophy of appreciating everything that happens to you. Because in the end, what you feel depends on how you feel about yourselves. We all tend to filter the world around us through what we know. So try going beyond what you already know to fill your minds with new stimuli, nourish with different interests, and open it to anything out of the ordinary. Scientists also need a space in their hearts for art. Even the most rational person needs to know the extraordinary driving force of emotion and of passion. If you can prepare your mind to take in the new and the unknown, then you will also be open for all that life has to offer. You should be the first to want all this. Life is too short to let the world we experience be restricted by our own limited vision. Those who are unable to see things from a different perspective and to listen to different opinions and to go beyond their own limited experience lose the opportunity to live life to their fullest. And the biggest tragedy is that they will never realize what they've lost. Now, of the very many books that I've read as a teenager and also much later in life, one in particular inspired me on how to confront life. It's a book called Zorba the Greek by Nikos Kazantzakis. I'd like to share with you a passage from the book. It says, "We're little grubs, minute grubs on the small leaf of a tremendous tree. Some men, the more intrepid ones, reach to the edge of the leaf, and from there we stretch out, gazing into chaos. We tremble, and we guess what a frightening abyss lies beneath us. In the distance, we can hear the noise of the other leaves of this tremendous tree. We feel the sap rising from the root of our leaf, and our hearts swell. Bent thus over this awe-inspiring abyss, with all our bodies and all of our souls, we tremble with terror. And from that moment begins the great danger. Some grow dizzy and delirious, others are afraid, then try to find an answer to strengthen their hearts, and they say, God. Others, again, from the edge of the leaf, look over the precipice calmly and bravely, and they say, I like it. In that I like it lies the lesson that at the beginning of the speech I promised that I would not give you. And in it lies the answer to what you will be tomorrow. It depends ultimately on how you view the future. It depends on the faith that you have in yourselves, your desire for the knowledge, and your willingness to test yourselves. There won't be anyone pushing you to the edge of the leaf, forcing you to abandon routine or the sense of security associated with habit. It will depend on you and on you alone. And it is also the only way in which you will find your wings and ultimately take flight. I can only hope that you will have the courage every day to listen to your hearts and appreciate all that is beautiful in the world. I hope that each one of you finds true freedom and is able to get up every day, look around you and say, I like it. I wish you all Godspeed.